Is South Carolina paying for recruits to come visit? Maryland coach Mike Locksley drops a bombshell. Second question, who cares? Who cares? We get into why this is a horrible look for Mike Locksley and a real big waste of time to talk about it all at his press conference. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Hope everyone's having a fantastic Wednesday and a great week so far. So we are halfway through it. Got Ole Miss in 3 days. Got a lot to talk about in general. There's been a crazy day of college football, but a lot of it also a lot to talk about with South Carolina specifically. Today's episode brought to you by us. Just gonna be us. We're just gonna get right into the content. I do want to say before we get into the content, anyone who's made Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day, shout out to our everydayers. We are very appreciative, and thank you. We're free and available on every single platform you get your podcasts on, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Remember, also, best way to keep this thing going and growing is by subscribing to the channel. Had an incredible month of that in October. And also commenting below. Maybe just comment on the content in the sports. Maybe if there's an issue with how much I touch my glasses or move my hands with my crippling ADHD, maybe we'll leave those comments for another day. But let's get into today's episode. There's a couple things I want to talk about. There's some developments with Virginia Tech as it regards to who they're hiring next. There's nothing substantial or concrete evidence yet, but there are a lot of rumors. Usually when there's smoke, there's fire. When things like that happen, then the big thing, moving towards Ole Miss, moving on from the Bama game, obviously, and then moving towards Ole Miss, start previewing that. And then what South Carolina was in the news for, inexplicably, I did not see this happening today. Mike Locksley decided to give it was like he was dunking on South Carolina a little bit and trying to have a little bit of gamesmanship. It came off really weird and really unnecessary is probably the best way to put it, because of the nature of what he was even talking about. But this past weekend, 5-star plus edge commit Zion Elee was visiting for the South Carolina Bama game. Don't know the ins and outs of what his visit went like. I don't know how well it went, how bad it went, or anything in between. I do know that kid is a elite 5-star edge rusher, and those don't grow on trees. And those are the kind of players that you roll out a red carpet for. So when I heard that the pushback and Maryland fans, which I didn't know existed, and then Mike Locksley decided they were going to kind of throw shade at South Carolina for potentially paying him money to visit, I, of course, like most of you, had a reaction to it. This was the quote. In my opinion, those guys, they get paid to go take those trips now. Why would I be mad at Zion to make $5 to $10 grand to go down to South Carolina? He's been one of those guys that's been really loyal to this area. He's been loyal to me and the program that we've created. I'm not saying that's what happened, but, over the years for me, if I have great communication with a kid, I can't operate out of fear. So I guess here's my main thing. Here's my main thing for Mike Locksley. You're in a pretty bad situation right now at Maryland, and you are hanging on for dear life, I feel like, with your job. He's on a hot seat. They are not a team that has competed for really anywhere close to even getting to a Big Ten championship. But since regional geography came into play with this, and Mike Locksley is a great recruiter, usually offensively, because he's an offensive-minded guy. But since he was able to do all that, and you have a local kid who's a 5-star, they were able to land him or land a commitment from him. But to suggest without knowing that South Carolina is paying to go on visits, bad look for one. Because if you don't have any concrete evidence of that, there's no reason to say it. 2, you're also not supposed to talk by name about any recruit that's not on campus. That's a violation from an NCAA rule. So point number 2, you look stupid. And then last but not least, if you are sitting here and trying to say something about how, well, why would I get mad at him to go, the people are paying him to go on these visits and blah, blah, blah. And again, you don't know that. Even if they were, buddy, that's the name of the game. Like that's the name of the game now. And I'll tell you what, there was an initial pushback, like an initial reaction from people, I think, when they saw it was like, oh man, South Carolina's having to pay recruits to get here. And I knew that was going to fade pretty quickly because it was the wrong reaction. Then you had the crowd that started weighing in on this whole thing. That was a little bit more reasonable and understanding of how stupid it sounded. And they had a similar reaction, I think, to what I had, which is, who cares? Like, if South Carolina is paying recruits to come on visits, who cares? Everyone's doing that. Like everyone. Maybe you could talk me into the fact that teams like Ohio State or things like that, maybe they're not, but they also have bigger budgets, so I don't know why they wouldn't be. For a 5-star, this has been the norm for about 2 or 3 years, and if they aren't paying it, they're at least those recruits in their camp, whether it be their parents, their handler, their agent, whatever words you want to use for it, that's they're at least asking. And I'll tell you what I my biggest takeaway out of all of it was, if you're paying $10,000 to have a 5-star recruit come visit your campus and come down to what do you call it, for the weekend, and in a big game atmosphere like that. Now remember, this kid committed last year, right? Last year, in last December. He is the number 2 overall player in the country. If you're paying a kid in this day and age to come visit, that is like it. I don't even have an analogy for how stupid and like mind-blowingly like no duh that entire scenario would be. Like what you're chastising someone over or a program over is the norm. It's the new norm, but it's still the norm. And so the idea that they would be paying for someone to come visit, good. I want as many 5-star kids on this campus as possible. Like, why would you not? And in this day and age, $10,000 to get somebody on campus for a visit, whether it's official, whether it's not, you show him around for that weekend in that environment. Yeah, that's a good investment. I don't know if it's going to translate into him getting like a commit, but that's a good investment. That's a wise use of money to put someone, like, if you were drawing it up and said, okay, listen, it's going to cost you 10 grand. What's the best possible outcome? Well, the best possible outcome is he commits on the spot and flips his commitment from Maryland to here. But if you were just drawing up a weekend to go and it was, how about you get to see the environment against an Alabama team in a top 5 matchup or playing a top 5 team where, like, I know they didn't win, but I mean, my God, how incredible was that atmosphere to see for when South Carolina is not having a great season, let alone what they could do with him and building in this recruiting class. So when I heard this, I wasn't shocked. I will tell you this. I will tell you this. I can tell you this firsthand. When he was on staff at Alabama in 2018, remember that game against Clemson, walking out the door in Santa Clara when they lost to Clemson like 44-18 or 16, whatever it is, in that national championship game. I remember he took this job, and going into the postseason, he was 1 foot out the door going to Maryland, starting his own thing. And there were 3 different people, including him, that were supposed to be handling the offensive play calling duties. And it became so contentious and so ridiculous. It was him and Josh Gaddis and someone else. I think it was a guy ended up going to Miami and in Arkansas that was a former quarterbacks coach and then offensive coordinator. But it got so contentious and petty and like childlike because of like who decided who wanted their ideas used more, their game plan used more, that he ended up just saying, whatever, you guys do it. I'm done. And, you know, I can't speak to him outside as a person or as a coach, character-wise, outside of that. But I will say from this situation, it felt desperate and it felt like he was whatever he was trying to accomplish, it was the exact opposite. So that is just my opinion. Let's move on and talk about some things that are actually important. And even though that is dominating the recruiting news cycle right now for some odd reason, before we go to break, we're going to pay some bills. When we come back, we're also going to talk more about the Ole Miss game, some latest news on Virginia Tech, and why it is good news, bad news, however you want to look at it. But it does look like it's news that is signifying Shane Beamer isn't going anywhere. Before we do that, I want to talk about our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls, with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV. You can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move or be moved. We are going to move on to the next segment. We'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks after this. All right, let's get into some of the other stuff that I thought was interesting from today. And I don't know how I think it's all very, very preliminary, but there are rumors out of Blacksburg about their coaching search that they have zeroed in on James Franklin. Now, I will believe it when I hear some more substantial evidence and more people that I would trust to deliver that news. Right now, it's just like local accounts, I guess, that are saying that they are in talks to start negotiating a contract. Now, I don't care who they hire. The only reason Virginia Tech's hire would ever matter to me is if it involves the guy that is currently coaching South Carolina. I've told you before, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that he's going to leave to go to Virginia Tech. I think South Carolina is not just a better job, but it's a much better job. You're currently in a coaching carousel, in a coaching cycle where it's like you're hearing so many people argue this whole thing about this is being a better job than another job and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. Now, I do want to say this. If you're not going with Franklin, it does feel like, I wonder how far down the list Beamer is. The other part of that is because I think Franklin is a bigger name than Shane Beamer. Like I don't think that's. I mean, he was at a bigger program for a long time. He's got a proven track record. You can say what you want to about his inability to win top 5 and top 10 matchups. I get that, but between the two, I think he's probably a bigger name than Beamer. Not saying he's a better coach. I'm not even getting into that argument. I'm just saying between the two, he's a bigger name. I wonder how far down the list Beamer's name is for Virginia Tech. And the other question I would have is this search starting because his name is already crossed off the list because they had conversations? I don't know the answer to that, but that is where my assumptions and first questions that would come up would land. And I think that when you talk about this cycle, it's so fascinating because there's so many different coaches that are going to so many different openings that are coming from, like LSU opened, Florida, Penn State, Oklahoma State, Oregon State, doesn't really matter, UCLA. There's and then you think about like Rutgers could come open, or if which I don't think it will, but like Auburn could come open, Arkansas already is open. Like there's all these different places that could open up. If you're Shane Beamer and you are worried about your job stability, which I don't think he is, I feel like he's just too much of a competitor to make like a lateral move or something that's safer. I think he's just too much of a competitor and believes in himself too much, which I love. But if you're looking at something like that, is any part of you wondering, well, if I go to Virginia Tech this year, does that set me up better in case something goes sideways next year? The buyout's not astronomical at South Carolina. I have heard that the fan support is began to wane a little bit in comparison to what it was at the start of the season or last year. That's what happens with losing. Winning cures all. We all know that. But I wonder if there's any part of that working. I wouldn't say against South Carolina, just working as a factor in any of this. Because if I look at this year and I say, all right, listen, those are all the jobs that are open. I don't think Shane Beamer's going to be approached by any of those jobs. But I also wonder if if you're sitting here in a situation with like that, where you're like, well, if I lose my job next year, I don't know what opportunities are going to open up. I mean, like he wouldn't leave here. I don't think he would leave anywhere, leave South Carolina for anywhere but Virginia Tech. But I also wonder if there's a part of the mindset which is wondering if there's this much unrest and this much instability and change in this year's coaching cycle, would it be best to get ahead of what could potentially happen next year? I don't know. But I do think if they're talking to Franklin, that's a good thing for a number of reasons, because what sucks more than anything, speculation is great for somebody that's in a job that has to talk about it. But also, like, I would like to talk about football and talk about, like, how to make this program better, and not wonder, like, what are you hearing about this? Are you in, like, getting on flight tracker things on Twitter, like, so-and-so's plane left Oxford, Mississippi and landed in blah, 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 and like all that kind of stuff. So, but it's just something to be mindful of. I think the quicker that they are able to make a hire there, it's not a domino that's going to fall and impact any other landing spot for them, unless it's Franklin. But if it's like, if whoever they hire, and they have not made a big splashy hire really ever since Frank Beamer left. So I don't know if Franklin would be too big for them. Like if that's a $10 million job, I don't know if you're paying that if you're Virginia Tech. But I do think that once that happens, it may not be a domino that falls for the national landscape. It is a domino that would fall and affect and impact this program specifically, because it's like, cool, that's over, move on, figure out the recruiting class, figure out the end of the season, and let's go from there. Okay, so also want to talk about this too. Moving forward, there's going to be more and more openings that happen. I thought about this today, and as crappy as the situation that South Carolina finds himself in sometimes, and I get it, man. Like, I saw that people were saying on social media that was the most gut-wrenching loss they'd ever been a part of. Brother, no. No, it wasn't. It was a tough loss on Saturday, but there's been much worse that's happened to this program specifically. And hopefully those days are getting fewer and fewer. But at the same time, I know people were still pretty upset about the weekend. And I know people feel like sometimes this program is snake bit and unlucky and just like, why does this keep happening? All this kind of stuff. I will tell you, from the outside looking in at other places, I thought about this today, and it was a very real, like, be thankful for what you got type of moment. I'm sitting here in Baton Rouge, and I'm working like I do every day, and going through all these numbers and news and writing articles and posting stuff on social and all these other things. And in this state, the governor is involved with who's going to hire. It is a blank show. Not allowed to cuss. SHIT show. It is terrible. And I as funny as it is to laugh about that happening here, and it's comical and like, it's the most ridiculous headline I've heard. If you haven't heard, let me explain real quick. The governor here in Louisiana has said that the AD at LSU is not going to be allowed to make the next hire. The athletic director is not going to be allowed to make the next hire. I don't even care to get into reasons why, whether it's a good point, bad point, anything else. I've never heard of a governor saying that he would let that happen. And he was in a meeting, like, or in a press conference, talking about like a federal funded program that had nothing to do with football, and then brought all this up, and then said, I would rather have President Trump make the decision than him. And when I just tell you, like, I was reading all this, it was like, it's got to be a South Park episode. Like, this is crazy. So it's been a tough year for South Carolina, but I'm telling you right now, guys, it could always be much worse. And one thing I know about this program specifically is that there are ebbs and flows to everything. But when that dip hits, man, it usually comes back greater the next time, right? Like some of those like painful losing seasons, they usually result in a pretty big bounce back. So I'm hoping that's what happens next. All right, we're gonna close out today's show with a quick little talk about our friends at Peloton. We're actually getting one next month. I'm very excited about it. I was told I have to promise that I'm going to use it, or we're not allowed to get it. So fingers crossed, guys. But also after we talk about Peloton and get into the final segment, we're going to get into an initial little preview about Ole Miss. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Before you do, allow me to pay some bills here. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness, guys, with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. God, this is awesome. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move. Whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors, this is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, reach peak performance. Listen, I've had a Peloton before. It was awesome. It makes it fun, super helpful. I'd say the coolest thing about it is they have something for everyone. Like they have, like, if you want to ride, if you want to just ride and take a class, like one reason I don't like doing that in an actual class setting is because one, the seats hurt like crazy, but also because I don't want to go there for 60 minutes and listen to techno music. It's super loud and be so sweaty, and then only be able to do the first 30 minutes of it because I'm so tired or whatever. They have different classes or I guess it would be called a class where you take with whatever instructor you want to take, whatever music style you want to take. They have stuff from like Disney, rock, classic rock, country. I mean, like anything you can imagine, they do it. And then on top of that, you can pick your length of time. If you want to do 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30, you want to go for 60, whatever you want to do. They have all of that, and it's really, really awesome. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. All right, we'll be right back. Close out the show with the third segment of Locked On Gamecocks. All right, let's close out today's show. A little look ahead. We're going to preview Ole Miss in depth tomorrow. We do some things to look for here. I'm just kind of like looking at some of the bigger matchups here. The one that jumps out to me the most is Trinidad Chambliss for Ole Miss. By now, I'm sure you heard, former D2 quarterback. We love our D2 athletes on the show. But former D2 quarterback at Ferris State, and a kid that came into this role at Ole Miss, where he's been incredible. Like I don't know how he wasn't the starter going into the season over Austin Simmons, for one. But you never want to lose your job to an injury. That is what happened with this situation, because Simmons got injured and they put this kid in, and Trinidad Chambliss has been awesome ever since. Got a really good running back, Kewan Lacey. They've got the biggest tight end I've ever seen in my life. He got banged up last week. I think he's like 6'6", 260, or like he looks like an alien. Like he's a freak of nature. But the injury report is going to come out in about 10 minutes. And so we'll see who's on it from both sides. Hopefully you're healthy again. Because last week, obviously, that team looked much different, especially up front for South Carolina when they were healthy. But the Trinidad Chambliss, the thing that I'm most interested in is this. This is a kid that has come in. He's put up over 300 yards of offense in every start. He's had 250 yards passing or more in every start. They are not as committed to the run as they've been in the past. Kewan Lacey's a good running back, and he's got home run speed, but this is a team that throws the ball a lot more, and they do it really well than they focus on running the ball. The way I look at this, I think from like the biggest matchup that without getting to win the turnover battle and all that kind of crap that we usually talk about, the first thing for me is this is South Carolina and Ole Miss, their linebackers, like the linebackers of South Carolina going up against the quarterback for Ole Miss, and that is this. I explained that so poorly. Allie just got home and she's got dinner, and I'm ready for it. But let me refocus here. We're just getting all the ADD ticks out right now. So the South Carolina linebackers versus Trinidad Chambliss, I think, is a huge thing. A lot of play action, a lot of getting him on the run, getting him out in space. He's very effective with his legs. Now, he's not, I don't think he's as good of a runner as Matt Corral or even Jackson Dart, but he's still a plus runner. And having making sure somebody, I don't think you have to put a spy on him, but you need to make sure they're not open chunks of yardage available for this kid to use with his legs, because he will hurt you if that's the case. And it's a good like prep really for what they're going to face the following week too with Marcel Reed, who they are trying to use him. He's got a really good ability to run the football, but they are going to use his right arm first. It's the same thing you'll see with Trinidad Chambliss this week. But I think being disciplined at the linebacker position, especially with your eyes, seeing the right keys, all that kind of stuff, that's the first thing that I look at when I look at this team, how to stop them, because I think they're going to have some success offensively. I also think South Carolina is going to have some success offensively. I think that South Carolina took a step forward last week. They're not anything that's like blowing you away from a number standpoint, from like total yards or even with like the points on the scoreboard, all that kind of stuff. But it was nice to see that you were able to sustain some drives, you were able to hit some big plays, and that felt like a step in the right direction. This is an Ole Miss defense is much worse than Alabama's, and especially in the secondary, there are opportunities for this receiving group to kind of put it all together. So if you come out like you did last week, I don't think that you're going to want to get into a barn burner with this group with Ole Miss, especially with Lane Kiffin, how good he is offensively. But if you can figure out a way to start putting some points on the board, I do think this is a situation where Ole Miss might be in a little bit of a trap game situation. This is the last tough game on their schedule. They have Florida, Citadel, and they get Mississippi State. And they're coming off a game against Oklahoma, and it feels like all the hay's in the barn. And all we have talked about from Ole Miss, an Ole Miss standpoint all week is Kiffin leaving for Florida? Is Kiffin leaving for LSU? Does Kiffin want to stay at Ole Miss? And Ole Miss is obviously going to make the college football playoff. How good of a job Kiffin's done with that? I have not heard South Carolina mentioned once this week when it comes to Ole Miss. So I think that you have an opportunity to go sneak up on them, especially early. You just have to be efficient and effective and hopefully figure out a way to take the lead. But the first thing that jumps out to me, and we talk about all the other stuff, the inefficiency on offense and the things they haven't done really well. I think the big thing, the first thing I want to see from this team, if they're going to be successful, because you're going to have to get some stops. Like you're going to have to, even that game against Georgia that Ole Miss had, they scored on their first 5 possessions. They got stopped in the final 2, and that's how Georgia was able to win. Again, I don't recommend allowing them to score 35 points on their first 5 times they touch the ball, but figuring out a way to get a stop and keep yourself in it is key, and that starts the linebackers and making sure they're seeing the right things, which I feel like they've done a really good job of this year. So that is all for today's episode. I appreciate you guys so much. I hope all of you have a great rest of your Wednesday night. Good start to your Thursday morning as well. We'll be back with a full preview on Thursday's episode, and until then, go Cox.